When you purchase home and auto insurance, there's a couple pieces that you have to be aware of that you're responsible for in this policy process. The first part is understand your responsibilities with the actual documentation of a policy. Some companies require proof of prior insurance, is what we call it, POP. And if you haven't pulled your data on their end, they may want you to prove that you have current insurance for either your auto or your home. Sometimes you have to prove the residency that you live in, that you own the home. And then also understand the coverages that you're purchasing. So when you get what's called a declarations page, or an application we'll call it, the application is going to be what you have purchased and what you're purchasing, and then you have to sign off on that. Everything that you believe to be true is one of the questions that they're going to ask. So knowing that, there's usually a list of things that you have to do on your end that makes that policy active and continuous. Let's dive in a little bit further and go through some of these different processes and parts that you have to do on your end, typically with an insurance policy. By the way, if you have questions, put them in the comments below. Happy to try to answer any I can. If you are shopping around, I'll also put a link in the description below to companies that we work with that may be helpful for you as well. So knowing all that, you have to have the determination. One, make sure your deductible is correct. Make sure your wind and hail deductible is correct on the house. Make sure your comprehensive and collision deductible is correct on your auto. So those are the two biggest complaints that I see, is when someone goes to file a claim, I didn't realize I had that deductible. So when you look at that application, make sure that you have that correct. Also know that those documentations, you may be able to opt in to take your own photos of your own house if you're doing home insurance. You may be able to take your own photos of your own car when you're doing auto insurance. Sometimes you have to go through a CARCO inspection, where you have to go to a location and they'll actually inspect the car for you. Make sure that you read through that, because the agent may have forgot. They should always tell you. If they didn't, unfortunately, it's in the paperwork and you're signing the paperwork. Make sure that you understand that part. It's not a whole 50, 100 page thing. Usually an application is going to have 5 to less than 10 pages, and 9 times out of 10, right at the top is the what is your responsibilities on these policies. What are the documentation, trailing documents as they call them, that they need to continuously get after the fact. The second part you're responsible for is the payments. Duh, Mark, I'm buying a policy, I get that. That part you need to understand is, what does the late payments look like? What does, if I miss a bill, if the date is incorrect, can I change things? You have a lot of flexibility with the home and auto insurance. Mostly the auto insurance is the common one that I see, but you have to understand that those payments have different fees with them. If you're paying with a credit card, you're probably paying a larger fee than if you're paying with your checking account. And if you're paying cash, no one really takes cash anymore, but I guess you could send a money order to a certain address. You just got to get that from the agent that you're working with. But knowing those options can actually save you some money as well. And if you're paying in full, that's going to give you the best deal. 9 times out of 10, you usually get 50, 100, couple $100 off of that policy. Especially on auto, you're going to get a better discount as you go forward. The third piece that you have to really focus on is you have to maintain the updates on the policy. So if a young driver turns of age and they start driving, you're supposed to notify your agent. If you have new people that move into the house and they're a risk in your driver's policy and your homeowner's policy, you need to at least talk with somebody to let them know of the changes that have happened. If you have somebody using your car for driving you to the doctor or any type of those risks that could be a possibility that they could get in a claim, you need to make your insurance aware. Now, most of the time, they're going to naturally cover permissible use. But if you have somebody consistently, and consistently to them is 3 or more times a year, then you need to either list them or at least notify them so that they can approve without having to necessarily add them to the policy. If it's somebody you don't want driving, a lot of times you can even exclude that person to move forward. But that's your responsibility, is not only are you signing off that everything's true, you're signing off if there's any additional risks that they didn't talk about. That's your responsibility moving forward to let them know of those scenarios. The fourth is your requirement to report claims. Now, this is a little bit tricky of a situation. Actually, laws play factors in this, and what typically law and average from what I see from most states, you'll have to look up your specific state, but I'd say the majority of the time, anytime there's a claim that results in over a $500 worth of damage. Some states are $1,500, and it just depends if the state even requires it. But if you have a claim, you must have a police report filed, and it's probably just keeping the peace in all honesty. But a lot of the times your agent is going to say, let's just go get an inspection. Probably 70% of the time you're going to drive off if it's a small accident anyways. You're going to go get the estimate on your own. Maybe you've swapped data with the person that hit you or you hit them, and you go that way. It gets a little complicated because what happens is a lot of these accidents could have been prevented by having the police called, because this driver now says you hit them, but there's no proof because you guys left and you took each other's information. So making sure that you take the right photos, having the right situation. That's more so the auto. For the home, anytime a water main burst or something happens to the home, you need to report that to your insurance if you plan on using them for the insurance. It's your responsibility to fix and prevent future damage in those occurrences. For example, if the water main did break and water starts leaking in the house, there's a shutoff valve. You need to know where that shutoff valve is. You need to go turn that off. You need to call a remediation company right away so mold doesn't start to build. The moment mold starts to show up, most policies start to deny those claims because you didn't take the next steps to prevent future damage. And the sixth is probably the least favored, is working with a claims adjuster. It's your responsibility, or the contract manager, I guess you could say, because they're not going to show up to your house and start running the show. It's your claim, it's your process, it's unfortunate, but you're paying them for that service to do it, not necessarily for the contractor to just take over. If you find a contractor that can and will do that, then great. If you trust them and they're doing a great job, you're going to have an easier process. The claims adjuster is there just to process all of the payments, all of the files, all of the documents, make sure that everything was prevented in the future, that there isn't going to be an issue next coming up in a year. They want to try to make sure everything's clean and cut and make sure that your process goes as smooth as possible. Now, we all know that almost rarely happens because policies aren't written perfectly. They're almost never what we want when we need them because we didn't want to pay what we needed to pay to have that. So there's a lot of different pieces. The biggest thing I can say is, one, understand the coverages that you need. I've got a home and auto here that might go into a little bit more in depth. If you're really just trying to find discounts instead of removing coverages, I would actually recommend checking out the insurance discounts here. I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.